It's time for a therapy session, Cormac. Tell me how you're feeling today.
I need to reboot my emotional router.
Wah, wah. Are you running low on emotional energy, positive energy? You got, what's the matter?
It What's that end of year rush for
A
everything to be
push.
done?
Yeah.
You know how it is. Everybody
Yeah.
wants to be done by the end of the
They
year.
want their
You're
stuff. Everybody wants
Yeah,
their stuff. What's taking
exactly.
so long?
Why aren't you done?
I want my stuff now.
Exactly. So
Jeez.
it's just one of these where everything piles up, piles up, piles up. And then, of course, there's the, hey, what is your coverage for staffing during Christmas time? I mean, are you going to be there available for us? No,
Wow.
I'm not.
The expectations are high.
It is always something that has kind of baffled me that we allow essentially ourselves to do this, right? We've set the
It's a
expectations.
choice.
Oh, we'll
It's a
be here
choice.
whenever you need us.
We're,
And
we're,
it's
we're
just
here to
like,
serve. We're a service industry. We serve. We don't stop serving. We serve all the time.
exactly, exactly. Even McDonald's closes sometime during the day.
So speaking of that, my youngest son got a job at Chipotle a few
All
months
right.
ago. And there's two locations around us. There's only two Chipotles around us. I mean, I'm sure there are many more near you. The one that he doesn't work at is closed quite often. And he was like telling me about this. He's like, they just don't have enough staff. They just can't keep workers.
And so they just close.
They just close. Yeah. I thought that was interesting. I didn't know that was a thing that could happen, but I guess it is. I mean, that just shows you kind of the state of, I guess, many things.
Since my middle child is a big fan of that place,
Not a
he,
sponsor. Yeah, they're not.
not a sponsor, but he's always thinking to himself, okay, if I'm driving back to school in the Upper Peninsula and it's, very rural up there,
How many Chipotles are on the way, Cormac?
there,
Does he load
once,
up?
once we leave the metro area, there's literally one.
And so do you stop there
And
every time? Is it you're going up there this weekend, right? Like,
I am going
are you
up there this
planning your
weekend.
Chipotle stop already?
Well, it'll probably it'll be on the way back, so we will have him.
Oh, you're picking him up. That's right. You're not dropping him
Yes,
off. That makes sense.
tis the season,
'Tis the season.
and we just
Nice.
got hit with. I'm sure you're getting ready for the winter
The bomb
time.
cyclone,
Yeah,
whatever name they have to get people to
Chop,
watch the news. Yes, the Weather
chopping
Channel.
wood and all that other stuff. Get your
Yeah,
little
ready.
yeah. But we got hit with about 3 inches last night, and that's just here. I mean, I woke up. It was 10 degrees with a wind chill of negative. I think it said it was like -8.
I was wondering why you're wearing like a
Yeah.
heavy coat on the podcast here. It's because you got single pane
Well,
glass there in that old house.
eh, no, it was to be quite honest with you, it was because I just took the dog out before we
Oh,
recorded,
okay.
and
You just ran back in, sat down. I'm ready to go. You're gonna be peeling
yeah,
layers off throughout this conversation. Yeah,
I,
as
I will.
as you fill your soul
And
because of
he,
your emotional emptiness.
yes, and since he wasn't willing to come back in when I needed him to come back in, no, he's not out there. Most of the feeling in my extremities, they're still out there.
You just they fell
So
off.
exactly. So yeah,
Jeez.
that's why I've got layers. The dress
Oh,
hoodie,
yeah, dress hoodie. Nice.
the dress hoodie.
I didn't know there was
And
such designation, but I like it.
I designate dress hoodies. So this is more of like a sweater hoodie. And so of course that is a dress hoodie, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, definitely. I like that. Have you noticed how the what shall we call this? Kind of the quality of attire has gone way down
yes.
since COVID, right?
Yes.
Since COVID
Yes.
for sure. It's like every woman in an airport is wearing yoga pants for everything, right? Like everywhere.
Right.
The grocery and guys are
You
wearing sweats and like
yes.
slippers when they go shopping,
You and
right?
I have both traveled this past week.
Or yesterday, all
Yes.
day. Yes,
And I
yes.
was back at the home office in Baltimore. And it always baffles me, people's choice of travel attire. I'm like, really? Do I
It
need to see your toes?
I knew that was coming up. I knew there was going to be reference to flip-flops on airplanes here. But then there's the opposite, right? Which is the people with like the knee-high lace-up boots and like these crazy belts that take forever to get off when they're going through security. And they're wearing 3 coats and they have to take them all off and put all of those through. And what is going on? Do you not know people? This is why I got TSA PreCheck. And by the way, like way too many people have TSA PreCheck nowadays. Even that line is long. But at least I don't have to take all that stuff off and wait. And I get to go through the regular metal detector, not like the full body scan, right? And where people have to remove everything and I have to wait for them to remove everything. But I still see it. And I'm just like, I literally saw somebody yesterday on my 5 a.m. flight who had never flown before. And this person was in her 70s. She was talking about it. Never, ever, ever been on an airplane before. This is my first time flying. And so that person, I would give a full pass. Like you probably don't know all of you wear slip-ons, you don't wear a belt. Like if you're a muggle, right, and you have to go through normal airport security and you don't have TSA PreCheck because you've never flown before. Like there are certain things you may not know. But then there are those of us who travel every once in a while. Yeah. And I am always like, what are you like? You are literally going to miss your flight because you have to lace up 20-hole boots, right? Your Doc Martens that you just can't.
Come on, you've had to do this before,
but then there's the full flip-flop mode, right? Which is like
and you're like, why?
The name of this episode is now full flip-flop mode.
There you go. I love it. Yeah, it's
just for you. It's one of those because you're a lover of the flip-flops.
Our office traditionally flies Southwest, especially for trips back and forth to the office and other things. It was one of our early business models is we would do business wherever Southwest flew. And we've expanded since then. For the most part, we still have a relationship with Southwest, not a sponsor. But it would be awesome if they were.
A relationship with Southwest.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was a very loving business relationship. So
yes.
Mutually beneficial. You give them money.
Yes, exactly.
You put up with their policies.
Yes. And they give us a little bit of comedy when they talk over the intercom.
It makes it worth it, right?
Exactly. But there was this family, and had to have been at least 10 members flying, that had never flown Southwest before. So did not understand the concept of open seating.
Yeah.
And constantly kept talking about, well, what do I do? Where do I go? I'm like, so I kind of turned around.
So you took it on yourself as the cruise director. You're like,
exactly. I
got this.
I was like, honestly, it's really simple. You don't have to worry about looking for a seat. You're in a boarding group, so you'll basically get on the plane. You'll have plenty of overhead storage. Put your bag wherever you're sitting because the flight was only half full. It was like 146 seats and we only had 80 people, so it was perfectly fine. Although that family, for some reason, they all 10 sat together in. So like, you don't have to sit.
You have to. Like it's like the dinner table, right?
Sure. But for some reason, they couldn't fathom the concept of open seating. And I'm like, it's not that hard.
Because everywhere you go, it's assigned seats. Yeah. I mean, you're like, think of it as McDonald's.
Right.
the dining room, and you can pick any seat you want, right?
Right.
It's not a stadium.
In the week prior, I was in New York City, and I had a direct flight or an indirect flight on Southwest.
Indirect flight.
From Detroit to Chicago to New York flying in. And I'm like, I can't do that again. So I had a direct flight out from New York to Detroit. And that one was assigned seats and everything. And so you get on there, and there was this one guy who got on, and he's starting to get a little obstinate about it. And he was just like, can I just sit in one of the seats up front? Nobody's sitting there. Like, no, sir, this is assigned seating. Somebody said, this isn't Southwest. Go sit down.
Just the commentary from the back.
He was the last person on the flight, and he was trying to negotiate to like go and sit in one of the open first class seats.
It seems reasonable to me. No one's sitting there. I mean, up for grabs, right? Jeez.
Yeah, I was like, sure, if you want to kick in that extra, I don't know, like $76.
I mean, the seat's empty. Just make it, free for the taking.
I think. So I always think about that. I'm like, okay, if in the event of an emergency, the plane goes down or whatever, and you're like, seat 17C, that's where
You are
Cormac was
such an
sitting.
architect right now. You're like you go into any space and you're like, where's the door? Where's the way out of here? And
Well,
you go into a restaurant and you're like, I need to be able to see the door from my seat so that I know in the event of an emergency.
Need you guess where I always sit? I'm always in the emergency exit.
Well, you want the leg room. That's why you sit in an.
Oh, yeah.
You want to be first out? Really? I can't even. Like you're the Army. You're not going. You're not going out first. Yeah. What are you talking about?
Just like go ahead, take that early.
You're just there to hold the door open for people. That's what I'm.
Yeah, it's in our nature. Remember, we talked about being in the service industry.
Just doing my part.
I always chuckle too. It's just like in the case of an emergency landing, I'm like, if we're landing in the water, we went the wrong direction.
Yeah, right. And now we will say the things we always have to say because it's on the checklist and it's in our insurance policy that we have to. Yeah, I've thought that many times too. It's like, yeah, going to Hawaii, yep, makes sense. Going to Phoenix, Arizona, nope.
Exactly. You're like, there ain't no water there, unless you landed in somebody's swimming pool.
So I was in Colorado yesterday. You've been traveling as well. And it made me think of my homework assignment that I assigned to you. Do you remember? Yeah. How many states have you been in this year? This is like super late follow-up. This was a homework assignment probably 3 or 4 episodes ago. And I fully expected to talk about it as like the opening thing for the next episode. And then things happened and we never came back to it. So it sparked in my memory this morning. Oh yeah, we have this homework assignment. How many tiny little states have you been in this year, Cormac? Because that's you seem to go to the tiny ones. We're gonna play the Jeopardy music while this is happening. While you figure this.
Nobody's grabbing my phone to pull up the maps so I could look and count.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting how you look at the map to think about where you've been. For me, it was a combination of just memory, but also photos. I tend to look through my photos and see, I just kind of scrolled back a ways and it was refreshing my memory. I see you did not do your homework.
Well, the homework was like a few weeks ago, and if the professor didn't...
It wasn't theoretical homework. You're a full-on professor now. How many students show up like this, like you? They're like, oh.
I'm at all the time.
All of them?
I don't know.
Where's your model?
Yeah. Oh, don't get me started. They're
we're going there now.
Tomorrow, as of this recording, tomorrow is their last day of the semester.
Oh, okay.
And then the following Wednesday is their final presentations.
But all the stuff has to be done tomorrow.
Everything has to be turned in tomorrow.
There's gonna be like you, where it's like, oh, it's gonna sit on the shelf at that plan check, and we're gonna slip some sheets in at the end.
I'm currently at 27 this year.
27, but they're tiny states. You just go to tiny states.
Where?
I go to big states.
How many big states have I been? Well.
Qualify that.
You didn't say what is the average area of the states that you have been in? I don't know.
I'm looking now. I'm going back. I'm doing round 2.
You can get through. You can get through Rhode Island like that.
Yeah. Does that count? That's on your list because you went to Nova Scotia. Yeah, you went up through a bunch of states. Yeah,
I went through them.
So I just made marks on 2 states that I had not been to before. So you have new states on your list too, like states that you visited for the first time?
Honestly, yes.
Yeah.
Because of all of the driving that I've driven on the East Coast, I had never been to Maine. I've been near Maine, but never been to Maine.
Okay, cool.
And finally, I get to check Maine off of that list.
Nice.
Because I only had, in the continental U.S., I think I only had 7 that I have not been to. And Maine was one of them.
That out. I should look at that. There's way more for me because I don't live on the East Coast. So
because they're small states and
they're small states, yeah. So they're disqualified. And and the middle of the country. Like, who goes there? I fly over that
Yeah.
part. I don't go through that part.
I've driven through there on occasion or two.
Right.
Wow.
I've
There are some states that are incredibly flat.
there are.
Incredibly
I
flat.
witnessed them myself this summer. So 2 states on my list of 14. 14 big states on my list, Cormac. And
Keep driving.
South Dakota and Florida were both new to me. So
Really, I knew that you hadn't been to Florida, but I didn't realize that you hadn't been to South Dakota.
yeah, that was one of the reasons we decided to do that trip, was because we had not been there. It was like we were going to do the trip, and then we weren't going to do the trip, and we were just going to do something like that we had probably done before, because it was a logistics thing with people who were going to join us on the trip. And so then we'd like, no, like, let's do it. We should do it because we haven't done it, and that's what really drove the drive, as it were.
My wife and I talk about this, and I say, well, combined, we've hit all of the continental U.S. states. And then obviously only Alaska and Hawaii are the only ones remaining.
What are you waiting for, man? Those are ones that are amazing. Get to it.
Well, I look at Hawaii this way, and wait till I'm just waiting for it.
I can't wait for this.
What is the predominant thing in Hawaii?
What is the predominant thing? Water?
What?
Like, I don't know. What?
Yeah, beaches. They go to beaches. I was raised in Florida. I know what a beach looks like. I don't need to go to. I don't need to fly somewhere else to do the same thing that I did when I was growing up.
Let me tell you why Hawaii should be on your list, Cormac.
No, trust me, Hawaii is on my list.
It's a very small state.
Yeah. Oh, see, there you go. If you want to put a notch in your belt of all the small states, go to that one.
Right. Since it's all beaches. You know, what's interesting about that is if you go to the big island of Hawaii, there are very few beaches, actually. It's not about going to the beach on the big island.
I'm pretty positive that the whole word island includes beaches.
No, you know why?
All the way around.
It's all lava. Like, it's actually like cliffs and lava flow.
Does land meet water?
It does, but that's not
It's
a beach. That's not the definition of a beach. Beach is where the sand and the water overlap in a very nice, shallow manner. Yeah, like that. That's what a beach is.
So you're romanticizing beaches, and now that you've finally been to Florida, clearly you haven't been to those beaches that
I didn't go to any beaches.
Unromanticize.
I was not on the coast of Florida. Yeah, I was near Gainesville, so that right in the middle of the.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that's country.
Yeah, right. Like I said in our wrap up episode where I talked about that, it's very rural. It's very like where I live. So.
Well, we don't call that rural. We call that the sticks.
Yeah, you've got all kinds of names for it, don't you?
As you've seen, it's the sticks.
It is. Yeah.
It's the backwoods. It's backwater.
Backwater.
It's country. All right. So I have this question for you, because I've heard through all of our students as they're talking about their project and stuff, two words used to mean the same thing. And I don't know why I didn't point it out. I just let them go with it and all that other stuff, but I don't know why it was bugging me.
Okay. Yeah. I knew it. I knew that this was bothering you. I can't wait to hear about this. Yes.
Existing
mm-hmm.
and pre-existing.
Is this like occupancy and post-occupancy?
No, we're talking about the existing building that that their assignment is to do an adaptive reuse.
Yeah.
And so they'll say, and there's one particular kid who will use existing and pre-existing to explain the existing building over and over and over again, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
He uses both words interchangeably.
But I've heard other people, professionals, using the word pre-existing and existing to explain an existing building or existing conditions.
I'm asking ChatGPT right now.
Awesome. Because I looked at it this way and I'm just like, okay, isn't technically the definition of pre-existing, something that exists before that thing existed.
Yeah, right. Pre-existence. Well, this is
so,
why I bring up occupancy and post-occupancy. Like architects
Right.
use the term post-occupancy. That would, to me, mean after. It's not after the moment of occupancy. It's like after
Right.
occupancy, right? And so
Well-
it's like we do these post-occupancy evaluations, and it's like,
Right.
well, no, it's just an it's not post-occupancy. You're not done with the thing. You're using.
Well, I
the
think
thing.
now I will say this. I think the reason why they use that as a discerning factor between the two is because so early on in a project, before either a project is occupied or even materialized, we use occupancy to determine all sorts of different things, construction type,
Yeah.
Egress, all of these other things. So we're always using occupancy as a very specific thing.
Okay.
Whereas post-occupancy is, okay, everybody is now finally in the building.
We're done. The design team is done.
Yes, we are done. The construction team is done. Everybody is done. Keys are handed over to the user groups, and now they are there and they are occupying it. And so post-occupancy is like, typically for us, we typically do what, about, like a year after we want to go back, see how it's holding up, see what's worked, what hasn't worked, and things like that.
Yeah.
So
I will accept
So I sort of get.
I will accept this. I will accept this. That was well stated and accepted.
So what did ChatGPT say about existing?
Okay, so it says they're
pre-existing.
closely related but have subtle differences in nuance and context. Existing definition refers to something that is currently in place or present at the moment being considered.
Mhm.
Okay. There's a lot of more information here. Pre-existing refers to something that was in place or present before a certain point in time or before another condition or event occurred. Is that subtle enough for you?
It's
doesn't
muddy
really
enough. It doesn't.
Key differences. I see. This is what's so great about ChatGPT. It actually explains things.
Right.
Key difference. Existing focuses on what is present now. Pre-existing adds a temporal dimension indicating prior existence relative to a specific point in time.
Interesting.
So existing is present state. Pre-existing is prior state. Let's take a short break from the conversation to tell you about today's sponsor. Not long ago, we started hearing about a company helping firm owners build effective remote teams. When we looked into it, we found WorldTeams, a company that specializes in helping smaller architectural practices set up skilled and reliable remote teams. What struck us most was how they're addressing a critical challenge for small architecture firms, the need to scale teams up or down as workloads change. It's a great way to handle busier periods without the overhead of permanent hires, keeping labor costs manageable. WorldTeams is designed with this flexibility in mind. They're a lean, high-impact company that connects architecture firms with talented remote professionals, saving the hassle of endless resumes and interviews. Plus, they operate within your time zone and prioritize near-native English speakers, ensuring clear and effective communication with your team members. Their flexible contracts allow firms to adjust team sizes as project demands change. You'll be connected directly with these skilled professionals, building trust and collaboration while reducing operating costs without sacrificing quality, a win for any practice looking to expand intelligently. If you want to hear more about WorldTeams and how they can help your firm grow, visit worldteams.com/hire-top-talent. That's worldteams.com/hire-top-talent, or you can click the link that we've provided in the show notes. So once again, follow the link in the show notes or go to worldteams.com/hire-top-talent. Thank you to WorldTeams for helping make this episode possible. And now, back to the conversation.
Okay, so let's fast forward to, we have a project that was assigned. It is a existing building and the existing conditions that they were assigned to then do an adaptive reuse.
Right.
Is there any time in that conversation where you would use the term pre-existing when you're talking about the existing building?
Yes. So existing could be, I mean, it could, so think about it this way, like it could be an
You're being
abandoned.
my English teacher here.
It could be
You
a
and
mess,
ChatGPT.
right? It could, it's whatever state it's currently in when you take on the project. Pre-existing could be like when it was vibrant and being used in a certain way. That's how I would kind of distinguish between the two.
So I will accept that answer.
Nice. One for one. We're tied.
is the fact that, so when you're saying that you want to take this existing building back to its pre-existing conditions, and
That's like a restoration.
as part of a restoration, or the vibrancy of that, and you're trying to recapture the pre-existing conditions, because this particular building, the existing conditions are exactly that: an abandoned building, kind of gutted out, and needs a lot of love. It's pre-existing conditions, so now I'm getting it now, but.
All right.
Unfortunately,
the student wasn't making such a.
Yes.
They were just using.
They're not making that distinction.
Using both words for the same thing. Right?
Yeah. Nor were the few professionals that we were talking about that had the similar usage, and so I will.
You're gonna go full professor on them.
Well, I'm sitting here listening to it, and they're talking about all the pre-existing conditions, and I'm just thinking, you mean existing? You mean existing?
Well, and you think about like what you label on drawings as notation. It's
exactly.
Like E in parentheses, existing, this.
Exactly.
Yeah, not pre-exist, not P.
Or we use like, the gray hatch to denote, we put it in our legend that says gray hatch denotes existing conditions, yada, yada, yada.
Okay, now you bring up a new one. You just said denote versus note. So what's the definition of denote versus note?
God dang it. I was trying to get out of here as one for one, tied, and call it done.
Well, yeah, caught you red-handed. Okay, so let's talk about crunch time. So you said that the students' final deliverable is tomorrow, and then they have next week they have their presentations. Deliverables. So they get like this little rest period, which is awesome. Like that didn't happen when I was.
Oh no, not at all. We tell me you weren't doing the same thing that I was doing. That you were literally like, Evan, you're going to be presenting at 9:00. So at 8:55, you're like holding something, waiting for the glue to dry.
Yes. Rendering, still computers still rendering, and I mean I think this is a beautiful adjustment in the education system, which is like get your sleep and now focus on the story and focus on what you're going to say and what you're going to point at and how you're going to deliver that, rather than I'm half asleep and I'm sleeping through everybody else's presentation and not contributing to the conversation during the crits, right? During the jury, the review.
Exactly. And the thing, I mean, granted, it is still, it's what we should be doing, but it's not what we do in the profession. Give yourself that little bit. It's just like, okay, we're done.
Well, you could. I mean, this is interesting. I had this conversation yesterday when I was in Denver, and it was like, there are certain people who operate where it's like, we're done. We got it done. We set the deadline. We did it. And now that it's done. Like we do something else. We rest. We whatever. Right. But then there's time left people, and time left means work more. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Just like, well, we're like tweaking or noodling on a presentation that, for a new project that we're going after.
Design's
literally
never done.
up until the very end. And you're just like, why? Why are we doing that to ourselves?
Right.
Shouldn't we be preparing ourselves for that presentation or something like that, feeling rested, feeling ready?
So do these students even appreciate this, or
they
say that in a loaded way, but I assume that they do.
They all asked, if we're not presenting till Wednesday, why can't we work through the weekend?
And this is your opportunity to say, look, the profession's screwed.
Totally.
Come on.
And it's not like it's just like, look, there's a lot of things. It's just, and I basically said exactly what you had said. Is like, think about the ability for you to rest, relax, be prepared, practice your presentations. Like the bulk of what they're going to be presenting is what's in their head, not what's on the paper. They're going to be talking through it and things like that, and being familiarized with not only their part, but everybody else's part, just in case. I love how presentations, you're able to say, well, if you remember what Evan just said about this, what we did was we took this and we did this kind of thing. And so it kind of shows that the team worked together, right? And when you have the time to actually go through your presentations a few times, then you're really prepared. And I will say that I'm actually impressed with a lot of the different presentation styles that these kids are doing. There are some that you clearly see that there's that one person or other person that didn't contribute or doesn't really feel very comfortable. And so they don't really do much of the talking. And those are the ones that I would love to see taking this period of time to get more comfortable with the presentation, being able to present so that they can't get over that phobia of presenting.
Is this their first, like, where are they in their educational
this is their
journey?
This is the last semester. Sorry, this is the first semester of their fourth year. So this is a 4+2.
Oh, so they have plenty of experience already going through reviews. And so there's not like this new experience of learning how to communicate this, but
exactly.
They should have some tools already in their tool belt regarding how this is going to go down and what to do. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
So an interesting thing that came up in my conversation yesterday is the guy that I was talking with had an architectural professor who actually gave not just deadlines, like you give your students deadlines. They actually gave them an amount of time to be able to do a thing. So they would say, you get 4 hours to do this. You get 8 hours to do this. And not like an open-ended, the deadline's on Monday, so 24/7 until then, just go, go, go. It wasn't, that's how it was in our education, right? And this professor would actually say, which I think is really interesting, and I would love it to hear kind of what you think about that, because this is the real world, like working in an office in billable time. I mean, it's kind of like this, right? But it's like you have this many hours to work on this part of the project, and what can you get done? And I think that kind of prepares you even in a, let's just say a different way. I was going to say better, but maybe it's just a different way to think about it, right? Where it's like, no, really, you get 4 hours to do this. Let's see what you can do in 4 hours. And some people are going to do better than others, but I think that time constraint, not just a deadline, but an actual number of hours to do a thing in the service industry, right? That's very real. Like that's an interesting take on it.
Well, I mean, and if you think about this, that if you do something like that, or you do that exercise and you start to give yourself that time constraint, when you're working in practice, that actually helps you out in, let's just think about it in more practical terms of like billable hours and things like that. A lot of times people want to continue to noodle on designs all the way through construction documents. Giving yourself those time constraints of saying, okay, design's done. Now we're doing this. Now this is done. Now we're doing this. Now this is done. Now we're doing this. And being efficient with your use of time, and kind of in the exercise that they're talking about, it's like you've got 8 hours to do this or 4 hours to do this. It's preparing you to force yourself to say, okay, I'm done. I can't work on this anymore because I have another task that the clock starts on another task and I've got to get that done. And then all of these tasks combined ultimately leads to like the deliverables, which is what a client's looking for. They don't care what it takes to get to where it is. They know what they're expecting. They're expecting renderings or drawings or a model delivery or something like that. They're expecting the final product, and they don't care how you get there, just as long as at that deadline that you agreed upon, that you're giving them the full, comprehensive, fully coordinated end result of all of that effort. The problem is that a lot of times we deliver that end result and there's holes in it or uncoordinated items and things like that because we didn't stick to the 4 hours to do this, move on to the next one, 8 hours to do this, move on to the next one. Kind of the conveyor belt type system of
assembly line. Yeah, but and we know design isn't necessarily like that either. Right. And so it's like navigating that. But I think because how long does design take? The answer is design takes as long as it takes. And yet you can say like what they're actually paying for is your expertise to deliver a product. And let's see what you can do in 4 hours. Like to me in the educational paradigm, that's where this exercise comes in handy, right? It's like, okay, so let's see how prepared you are. Let's see what skills you have to do this thing in this amount of time, and then let's talk about it because it's a safe place to do that. There is no actual contract on the line here, and it does prepare you because it's like, when does creativity strike? It strikes when it strikes. It strikes at 3 a.m. It strikes in the shower. It strikes on the drive, into the office. But by doing the exercise and showing up all the time to do that thing, then you have way more command over it, and you can use your tools and experiences and your skills that you've developed over time. And being in school, like, that's still very early for all of this stuff.
Right.
But it starts to get you in the mindset of how that all fits together.
And I tried in the process of this last work 4 requirements, I tried to get them to think about it in ways of cartooning it out. Okay, you already know what is expected of you as your deliverable. Cartoon it out. Start working on and creating assignments for each of the team members on who can do what, play to their strengths, play to the previous works that had already been accomplished. Then set yourself and then assign them that work. But at the beginning, now you have what we ended up doing in our work 3 assignment was a group of 6 paired off into 2s, and each of them came up with a different take on a specific design. And so now you had 3 designs at the end, still in that group. So now you have 3 designs. Well, work 4 is you take those 3 designs and you create one comprehensive design. And of course, that's going to be tough, right? You get 6 people to try to agree on, like, give up either something that they'd been working on to work on somebody else's work, or try to figure out how to, like, make this kind of comprehensive design between the 3 different ideas. And it's tough. You totally get it. But, like, there's still, up until this past studio, they're still making design decisions on something that they literally have. Like, you have 5 days to get it all done and get all of the presentation, all of the deliverables, everything done. And these were decisions that should have impacts on everybody else's work, that you're still making these design decisions. You should have stopped, put a pin in it. I kept stressing, I don't know. I was listening to a podcast or an audiobook about something, and the mantra kept coming. And I've said this before at work, and I've said this a lot in studio, is progress, not perfection. Keep working to advance it. This technically at this stage, we're only really expecting sort of like a DD level, right? Mm-hmm. And so I always say, progress over perfection.
Not full CDs in an educational studio? That's weird.
Well, this is a technological school.
That's right. I want buildable construction documents.
Well, I mean, they are doing. So what's interesting is
for an adaptive reuse project in downtown Detroit that would normally take an architectural firm years to complete.
Exactly.
In one semester.
Yeah. Minor correction, because I know somebody's going to be listening to this that will correct me. So it's Flint, not Detroit, that they're working in. Yeah. But so there you go,
I'll accept
Kurt.
Your correction. Yeah, Kurt. AKA Coffee Boy.
Yes. But anyway, it's just interesting that this conversation that we were having. It's the first time that they've actually done group work. And of course, everybody hates the group work.
First time, end of fourth year, group work. What?
Yeah. I was going to say, like, we did group work a lot different. Now their next course, the last semester of their 4th year, they're going to be doing comp design, and they're going back to just individuals. So what it means is it's taking all of the things that you learned in all of the years up to that final one and doing a comprehensive project that takes all of those principles that you learned. Urban design, construction, HVAC design, all of these things. And it kind of becomes, so you're basically showing up. He's like, okay, what did you learn? Show me in this one project what you learned. And I love that idea, honestly. You're basically forcing them to show you, put on display what exactly they did actually learn. And it'll make the grading a heck of a lot easier than the group projects, because sometimes you do the grading where in a group, the group finished very strong, but there are those weak links within the group that you sort of have to, you look at it more as a group, not an individual. And so sometimes they're kind of skating by a little bit. So
does the whole group get the same grade, or do the individuals get their own grades?
we'll invite Kurt on and we can talk a little bit more comprehensively about that. But ultimately, like how I'm grading, it's based off of the group grade, the group work and everything
So
else.
the high performers suffer, the low performer, like it's oh, that's hard,
which is
man.
if you think about it, which is like the profession, right?
That is the profession.
That is exactly the profession.
In an academic environment, though, everybody's grades they're tied to something else. They're tied to scholarships. They're tied to
there are other factors that we put into this. So it's not a complete one and done individual meeting. Your group did great. This is the grade you get. Your group didn't really perform very well. This is the grade you get. It's not quite that. There are other factors and stuff that go into it when you're factoring the individual grades. And so that's why I said that there's somebody who's been doing it a lot more than I have. This is my first semester. My co-teachers, my co-professors, they would be the ones that could tell you that a little bit better.
Yeah.
I can just tell them that this.
Let's go back to these deliverables. I'm interested in how. So how hard-lined are you about deliverables and what is in the presentations? Because, I mean, one thing that always made sense to me, like there was always this list of, you got to have site plan, floor plans, elevations, sections, whatever the things are, and a model and, some renderings, perspectives, whatever those, those could be done many different ways. But to me, it was always like, what serves the project, what serves the story, what serves the narrative in the presentation, and not necessarily going like strictly. I was that person who I literally did all the things. Yeah. But then when I gave the presentation, I talked about the things that mattered when it came to communicating. And I think it's still okay to not do some things that don't make sense when it comes to the narrative and to the communication.
So I was trying to explain to him, like, this is sort of like, here's your code minimum project, right?
Code minimum.
Exactly. So here's the prescriptive of this is what you need. If there are some other things that, tell the story better than those particular things, we'll have that conversation with them ahead of time. So we'll know it's just like, hey, I decided to do instead of doing renderings, I did an animated walkthrough. Things like that. Or instead of doing this, I did this because, and so we're pretty forthcoming with there's flexibility in that because it's really all about the narrative. It's about how you tell the story about what you accomplished because at DD, we're really still talking about design, right? We want to talk about how we are servicing the client through design, but also servicing the design through like the technical aspects. And so however you best tell that story is acceptable, but at the very minimum, here are some of the things that you need to think about if some of these don't quite tell your story. But, we are finding that a lot of people are trying to adhere to at least that basic understanding that I've got plan, section, elevation, I've got site plan, I've got this, I've got that. There's a bunch of other things that they are integrating their lab work into the final studio project. So there's a lot of things that go into it. And some of those sort of start to muddy up the conversation. So it's how do you distill it down to being very clean, very concise, very clear exactly what it is. We were walking through and it was on this past studio, it was more me having the conversations with them about going through and pointing out, okay, you see that right there? Did you intend to do that? They're like, well, no, we're still trying to work this out, or we're not sure if that's something that we want to put in our presentation. I'm like, if it's something that hasn't been fully baked, fully thought out, and fully understand by you, don't put it in the presentation. Because if somebody asks you about that, you're going to stammer, you're going to not be very confident about how you are explaining it. It's like, there's no point in having things in there that you're not ready to defend. And so they're like, but what if it's part of our requirement? Like, then find something else that is telling your story that you can defend, that you can best illustrate your design work on instead of that. It's like, you've got like everybody built models, either in Rhino or in Revit or whatever. Everybody has all sorts of information that they've already created. There are better ways to tell the stories. And if some of them are, because my biggest criticism on architectural presentations in general are as we get too deep into minutia a lot when we don't need to be, especially when we're trying to do high level conversations with people who have no idea what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
I agree with that. But I think one of the problems with having a list of deliverables
Right.
is, and I want to reframe this conversation, not around just like requirements, because I think, you know, when it's education, it's its own thing. But there's this idea of like, look at our drawing sets. How much is in our drawing sets that nobody ever looks at? And it's totally in there because we've always done it that way, because it's cover your ass.
I could tell you because I've been receiving a bunch of RFIs. It's like, you're not even looking at the drawings. Well,
there's that. But there is also a lot of stuff that just absolutely doesn't need to be in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of like redundancy or unnecessaries, or there's things that are conflicting between your either base of design or performance specs and your drawings that are completely contradictory to each other. And then
because you've copy and pasted details from some other project, and there's all kinds of problems like that. And so like this goes back to the school, and this is why I bring it up. It's like, you've got to do all this stuff and make it look like you have done all this stuff.
Yes.
And there's a problem with that, because it doesn't serve the purpose of what you're actually trying to do. It's just like more work is better, and it's not true.
And I told them, this is now, it may not be popular to the other two professors in the studio or to the school in general, but I basically said, it's like, don't do any more work than you need to do to tell the story, period. Like, I don't need to go into it and explain it. It's like, in fact, like I was sort of editing for them. Like, do you need that? Is that going to be part of your presentation? Like, no, then we don't need to talk.
Yeah, simplify it, right?
Yeah.
Like, simplify it, keep it simple. And
Exactly.
And I think that the part that comes in where it gets a little difficult is you don't know what the jury's going to ask of you.
Right.
And you don't know what they're going to hone in on. And it may not be on your agenda, right? It might be on their agenda. It typically is, right? And so then you may want to have your stash of drawings or renderings or whatever that you could pull out that aren't on the boards, but still, like, I love your idea of pre-editing and simplifying the message, right? Because a clear, communicative presentation is super valuable. And like you said, like, you get lost in the minutia at the high level because you want to show the expertise, and
look at all the work that I've
too
done.
Much. It's way too much. Yeah.
I want to prove the fees that I'm charging you. You don't need to prove that they hired you for a reason. What they want to know is, can you deliver a clear, concise project that isn't going to cause confusion when it's out in the field and being constructed because you left something off because you focused on something else or whatever. I mean, it's just this clean, comprehensive. I keep going back to comprehensive, but I mean, it's just like, and that's how I look at our presentations too. It's just like, we spend so much time trying to either justify, look at all, it's like, well, we did all this work, so we've got to show it, right? Like, no, you don't.
Totally.
You don't have to show it.
Let's go back through your sketchbook too.
Exactly. No. it was, I remember one presentation that I was asked to pull together, and they're like, oh, you got to show them all of like your early sketches about, like, you were showing like all these hand joints, and you were like, the way that you were showing like the bones of the hand, and making kind of this. It was this whole little thing that I was doing based off of some archwork, steel archwork that I was showing with these articulated joints and all of this other stuff. And you know, as a brief kind of like concept that maybe that might be something of interest, is like, this is the inspiration. But to sit there and kind of like drone on about, like, wax poetic about things that they don't really care about.
No, you know what's cool about this what you're bringing up right now? I think it is great to show that, but literally that image is on a slide for 1 second. And then you're on to the next thing.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I don't think that it's like, you know, a throwaway, but it's like, or even one of the things that I saw a presentation for the building that we're working on with Renzo, and it's this Stavros building up for Johns Hopkins University campus. And the presentation, the very first opening slide was just this big blue page, mostly all blue, with the Renzo sketch at the very beginning. That's
Trademark.
the last. Yeah, that's the last time you see that
Lorenzo
sketch. Although you do see that sketch on like the construction, but it's like this very gestural kind of like sketch. It's not anything that makes a lot of sense, but it's like the idea, it's the seed. And so you don't really sit and like focus on or talk a lot about the cover sheet. You just move on. So you see the cover sheet ever so quickly, and then you move on. And that's the thing. And it's like, if you want to talk about, ooh, what was that, gestural sketch that I saw at the very beginning? Well, that was the seed that started all of this. Now let's go through this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so it's interesting to see how we focus the way that we tell the story. I was trying to also explain to them, because this is another pet peeve of mine, is that we always consistently think that we need to give presentations to other architects. Other architects are not our clients. Other architects are not in the room. We don't have to sit there and do all of the Archispeak. That, on the other hand, is trademark because it's ours.
Ba-dum-bum. I agree with you. I think architects suck at this. I think we're absolutely terrible at this. And I've worked with many architects who say way too much, and they don't engage the audience. And so the faster you can engage the jury into a discussion, the better.
Yeah.
That is absolutely the way that it needs to work. And so it's a little bit contradictory to what you just said, because they're probably architects and you are speaking to architects, and you get to use the Archispeak in those conversations. But ultimately, that's not what, like, your training is to speak to normal people, right? Not architects.
But even that, though, when you're in a jury and you're talking to other architects about architecture and stuff, there is still a way for you to, have your presentation embody the essence of the design philosophy and all of this precedent study and everything else that you've done, without having it be too cumbersome, having it be too heavy of, you really do want to get to the conversation, really talk about it. You did all of this work. And so if, as a group of architects, you want to delve a little bit deeper into it, you will, and you're prepared to, because you've done all of this work. Have it, as you said, kind of have it as those hidden slides that you can talk about a little bit later if you need to.
That's huge. And the power of the pause, and not just constantly spewing information and overdoing it, like not trying to explain every little detail.
Yes.
It is so annoying when there's no space for anybody to think or to feel the weight of what you just said. It's not their turn.
Yes.
It's not someone else's turn to talk when there's a pause. Right. There are many people who will take advantage of that. Right. If it's not their place, put your hand up, stop them. This is not the time yet for you to jump in. Like there will be space for you in a minute. Right. But that pause and learning how to communicate in a way that actually lands with somebody is super important, and not telling every little detail, leaving things for you to weave back in and let the conversation go where it's going to go is so powerful, so useful in these kinds of interactions.
It reminds, we were talking about music episode or two ago, and we were talking specifically about things like Violator album, Depeche Mode's Violator album. And so the second that you said that pause, I just thought of the song Enjoy the Silence. And it starts off with Enjoy the Silence, and then it just like does this little, almost like a pin drop kind of sound. And then it pauses for a second, and then it starts the song. And it's like you're sort of preparing yourself for what's next and absorbing it and getting ready to think about the next thing instead of being kind of
listening, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. It's setting the stage for it. That's a great analogy to that. We're going to have to link to that so people can hear it.
Yes. Yes.
Any other presentation tips that you have? I mean, this idea of preparing yourself, I think, is huge, right?
Yes.
And actually taking that time. Like, the work is not done. The deliverables have been prepared, but the work is in your brain, your subconscious. You're actively like going over these things before you're going to actually say them out loud in like practice mode, right? Is super, super, super important, because this is your one chance to make that impression. You're not going to get another chance to do it.
I mean, honestly, it's edit. And what I mean by that is the last time that I was on a Project Pursuit presentation, I just had a few slides to talk about. There's a lot of other people talking about a lot of other things. And so I was just a small part, basically talking about how we would implement the design into the existing or pre-existing conditions.
Whichever word works.
Whichever word works. But I had written something, and the first one was 4 pages. Then the second time I had I went through and I talked about it, looked at the slides, talked about how I would be talking about it. And I need to kind of talk about it, go up to the slide and use my hands to kind of indicate what it is that I'm, trying to talk about, because I talk with my hands. So as I was doing that, started to realize, oh, well, I don't really need to talk about that. I can just do this and show them how, through gesture, how to connect all of that. And then it became two sheets. Then it became 1.5 sheets. Then it became 1 sheet. Then it basically became about 3/4 of a sheet of just words that I wanted to make sure that I said that convey the idea of the constructability aspects of this project and how we would be able to implement them. And as long as I said that, no matter how I said it, just as long as I delivered it very comfortably and talked about all of that other stuff, then we would be fine. And so I edited to get to a point where I felt comfortable with the mastery of what it was that I was trying to say. And honestly, that's the biggest thing is edit it down, constantly edit yourself. Question, sit back and pretend that you're the actual person being presented to instead of the presenter, and say, look at the slide deck and say, okay, what am I trying to say here? Is it going to be clear and understandable to the people who are looking at that slide that the information that I'm going to be talking about when that slide's up on the board? Because these presentations are twofold, right? For architecture, it's visual and audio, right? And so you got to know what to say to support what you see on the screen. And if you say too much, or if you read the bullet points and stuff like that, then you lost them,
Totally. Get some fresh eyes on it. Give that practice presentation to somebody else and be
exactly.
Get feedback, real-time feedback before you actually do it.
Exactly. So
that'll be one
of
I'm
the things that
interested
we'll
to hear how these groups present. Is it going to be one person takes the lead? Are they all going to contribute? It'd be interesting to see what happens.
Everybody will have to present, and each person is kind of they've broken it down into what were they working on and how are they going to talk about it. And my advice to them is since you worked on this part, you talk about this part. So you have the mastery because you did it. So you're going to be the one that gives that presentation. Don't let somebody else give that presentation because they don't know what you were intending to do when you did that. So then the conversation, when it comes back around to, say, your client or the people you're presenting to, ask questions about, say, that particular thing, then you're the one who's going to be responding to it.
Because who's going to jump in.
You know who's there. And so everybody's going to be doing that. Everybody had a part to play in a role that they were assigned from themselves. One person did the model building and one person did this. They've got 2 models that they had to do, an 8 scale model that kind of fits into a site contextual model, and then a 1/4 scale detail model that kind of shows a wall section that shows how the assembly goes together and all of the materials and everything else. And so it's kind of an interesting thing. And one of the things that I kind of encourage them to do is some of their wall sections that they have as part of their deliverables reflects what, say, their 1/4 scale model is. So that when that comes up on the screen and they're talking about, the person who built the model can go and talk about it. And so now you have the model in your hand when you're looking up on the screen and you can see all the details and they're talking through, and here's where the brick is, and this is this, and this is this. And they're holding it in their hands so that they can actually see, there's a physical representation of the thing that they're talking about on the screen. And it's you're making all of these tools, use them.
Yeah.
Don't just do it because you've satisfied the assignment and never talk about it or never use it. make sure everything that you use is extremely deliberate to what you're saying, what you're presenting. And if you don't use it, don't present it.
So it'll be interesting to see how they plan their presentation so that it's this transition, that the handoffs aren't abrupt between speakers, and that they've thought about it ahead of time and who's going to say what, when, if that's going to, because we've been through interviews where somebody is not supposed to say a lot of stuff and they just go on and on and on, and then other people don't get to say the thing because you only have 20 minutes to present. And there's these real kind of psychological and characteristic things that people do based on their personalities, right? They just go into this autopilot of how they normally operate, when it is a team effort, and you've got to stick to your part so that it becomes the ensemble that it's intended to be.
So funny you say that, because one of that presentation that I was telling you about, that I kind of whittled it down from like 4 pages to 3/4 of a page.
You went on for an hour, didn't you?
No. Because because other people, I had 3 slides that ended up becoming 1 slide.
Right. You had to jam it all
The 3
together.
slides were there, but we clicked through them to the one part. And so my 3/4 page became about a paragraph.
Because you had to compensate for somebody else's
I had to compensate for somebody else.
Inability to.
But I had to make sure that all of the things, the point and intention of me being there and why I was talking about like how we actually implement the project, because it's kind of a phased, it's like a second phase to an existing building that's already there, and they're going to be replacing some buildings and connecting them together. But it's in a very complex kind of way that they would need to do that. And we felt it was very important for them to understand that process and how it would happen and what the challenges would be. But it had all of that, it had like 3 slides to kind of explain that I had to explain into essentially 1 slide, which was just a very similar project where we did basically the exact same thing. And so I just used that image of that other project to kind of explain how we did that project and how that project is reminiscent of what we would be doing for them. And what was the shame about it is that we had very specific drawings or slides that showed exactly what we would do for them, that because we had to edit it in real time, I didn't get a chance to do that. And I think that was kind of something that was important.
That happens. Well, that's true. And it happens, right? And what's interesting, like thinking about all this stuff, thinking about boiling things down to their essence, which you had to do in real time, right? To get to the point that really would land at that moment. You didn't get to do stuff that you wanted to do. So again, kind of doing this in advance, boiling things down to their essence, saying what needs to be said, edit, be prepared, know your stuff, be able to defend your ideas. But boiling it down to its essence is so important to get to the engagement stage early with the jury, right? Because that engagement, that conversation, that's where you as the presenter or the team is learning and getting out of this interaction what you need. This is not a one-way thing. This really should be a conversation, because this is where you're going to learn from people who have fresh eyes on the project, who haven't been there in every studio at every desk crit to kind of talk through this. They're going to get different perspectives than you 3 as their professors, right? And that's a huge opportunity in their learning evolution in school here. So like another reason to kind of reinforce this edit, boiling down to the essence, really getting to the nitty grit, but telling the story that needs to be told, so that the engagement can happen and have a really rich back and forth.
Exactly. Yep. Totally agree.
All right. Well, I'm excited to hear how it turns out. I think, like you said, this is your first time doing it, and it'll be interesting to hear of your reaction to the final outcome.
I'm looking forward to it.
You're ready.
I'm both very excited for them, and I'm also very nervous for them.
Of course, yeah. Well, you want them to do well. Like this is,
I want them to do well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You're like that. You're in that parental guidance role here, and you're shepherding new architects into the profession.
Right.
And of course, you want them to do well. Yeah, that's cool.
Exactly. Yep.
All right.